In the past several months, cross burnings in the Catonsville area has been an unsolved crime. Civil rights groups have blamed police for foot dragging in their investigation. Last weekend, black ministers offered a $500 reward. This weekend, police arrested two Catonsville men, 21-year-old Robert Frazier and this man, Paul Hoskins, a 22-year-old Klansman who admits to burning crosses.
Why?
Well, it's a symbol that there's reverse discrimination out there, and from now on there would be no problem with that with me because I'm discontinuing anything like that. And like I said earlier, I'm going to send in my resignation to the Klan that I'm not going to be a member anymore.
Why did you burn the cross?
Well, because when I went out for the police, I passed on my test, and I believe the reason I did not get in is because I was a white male. That's my personal reason.
I think it involves more than two people because I have in my office paraphernalia from the Ku Klux Klan. I have information that they are soliciting memberships in a wide area in several counties of Maryland.
Last weekend, the NAACP offered a $500 reward to anyone that would have information that would lead to the arrest and conviction of a cross burner. This weekend, we had two arrests. The NAACP's offer of $500 still stands. I'm Art Norman on the scene in Catonsville.
The litter from the Smith home lay in the street this morning while neighbors gathered in small groups, shaking their heads over the tragedy. Hope Ridgway saw little Robbie Smith running for help this morning. Her mother had asked her to find out where the smoke was coming from.
And when I got to this corner, I seen him coming out the door yelling, "Somebody help me, please, my house is on fire." So I ran down and knocked on 1606 Charles Street, and the lady opened the door, and she says, "What's wrong?" And he said, "My house is on fire, my mom and dad's sleeping, and they won't get up."
8-year-old Robbie went to Catherine Tolson for help. Firemen were able to rescue his mother, Evelyn Smith, but they couldn't get to his father.
And they brought her down here, which she didn't have too much clothes on, you know, coming out, and wrapped a coat around her. And then she was...
Did she know where her husband was?
She said he was down in the basement. She said, "Go down the steps, he's in the basement." And she was screaming and crying. It was so sad, it really was.
Fire investigators say David Smith apparently had gotten up to fix himself an early breakfast. They believe the 46-year-old man fell asleep in a chair near the stove and never saw the smoking pan burst into flames. I'm Frances Harden on the scene in South Baltimore.
tell me why it's worth that much and waiting in line and all? Why do you want to see it that much?
Well, it had good reviews, you see, and I figure I might as well go and take part in Baltimore's cultural arts.
Passage of this bill could be a means of conserving diesel fuel. As much as nearly 576,000 gallons a month. Local truckers and business firms will benefit from higher weights, thus adding to the state's economy and hopefully hold down shipping costs.
We would have more frequent and more serious accidents, not only to the drivers, but to the motoring public. At the very time that cars are getting smaller, trucks are getting bigger. Plus, the state of Maryland would have to pay tens of millions of dollars back into the road program to fix up the roads after they've been cracked by the huge trucks which would be permitted to use them.
30 to 40% of the average auto repair bill is falsified or padded. That's the claim of one auto mechanic who says he's fed up with the system.
A mechanic is forced to steal if he wants to make a living wage.
George Parrish, who's worked as an auto mechanic in the Baltimore area for many years, says repair rip-offs are common practice, but that the worst violators are the service departments of new car dealers. Repair work is generally billed according to a flat rate schedule, so many hours for a specific repair regardless of how long it actually takes.
You only get paid for the actual time that you turn in. And the way the setup is, you have to lie about the time you turn in. And the only way you can do that is to pad the ticket.
For example, he says a simple brake job can easily be padded.
This could add up to approximately 5 hours in time, which would mean that you would pay $100 labor at a $20 an hour labor rate, out of which the dealer himself would get $70 of that money, and the mechanic would get the remaining $30.
Mr. Parrish says that as long as it's so profitable for the dealers, nothing will change. But he says if the legislature passed a law requiring all mechanics to be licensed, it might change.
It will make the mechanic responsible for his own work, and it will put him in a bargaining position to deal with demand for decent wages to live on.
Until then, he says, people will go on paying for phony repairs. I'm Jack Bowden on the scene.
When the major oil-producing nations formed OPEC in 1960, we were buying foreign oil for $1.80 a barrel. The price at the pump was only 31 cents a gallon. Now, 20 years later, OPEC is selling oil at $27 a barrel, and we're paying well over $1 a gallon, with the prospect that it will soar to $3 a gallon by the end of this decade.
With energy costs taking up an ever larger share of our budget, finding efficient ways to use energy will become a dominant concern of the 1980s.
More of us will be using public transportation in the decade ahead, and carpooling may become an economic necessity. The trend to smaller cars will continue. The cars of the 80s will be smaller and lighter, and gas mileage will be much improved.
But the big changes of the 1980s will take place right in our own homes. The average Maryland house leaks heat like a sieve.
Warm air escapes between windows and door cracks, up the fireplace, and through the roof. Engineers who have studied this problem say that the average home heating bill could be cut by 50 to 80% if effective conservation steps are taken. Storm windows, caulking around windows and doors, and insulation. The experts say that $2,000 spent on effective conservation will be repaid in lower heating bills in just 3 or 4 years.
Most of us already have 2 long-term loans on our house and on our car, and the prospect of a third, an energy loan to pay for insulation and storm windows, is pretty depressing. But in the 1980s, that may be the only way to keep our heating bills from surpassing our mortgage payments. This is Patrick McGrath for News Scene Update.